Okay. Pig Latin in reverse. So I want to convert Pig Latin to normal word. It's always helpful to have an example to figure out how to do it. So if I pick a normal word like, how about bike? The Pig Latin version of it that I want to convert to that would have IKE, the B, and then the AY at the end. In Scratch, we can't just cross off and pull out the A and the Y. We'd have to make a new string. So for sure, we're going to have an input. The input is usually ask and answer. All right, so I'm trying. So this is my example here, and I'm going to use that to write my script. So I'm going to have an input. If I'm going to alter this, besides adding something to it, if I want to take things away, I need a new variable. So new string. I can call it anything I want. Maybe I'll call it normal. Or I could be more specific. I call it normal word. All right, other things. If I want to take a string and manipulate it in a way that removes stuff or moves things around, I have to loop through the existing string. If I'm going to loop through an existing string, I need a counter for the position of each letter. Let's call that position like they did in the book a few times. And then I'm ready to make my loop. So I'm going to do a repeat. And I got to figure out how many times to repeat. And then I have to do stuff. All right, so in comes the word Ikebe. And would you agree, I don't care about the last two letters, right? So for sure, I don't need two pieces in its length. So length minus 2 is going to be important in here. Since in a string, each letter has a position, a first, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth in this case, if I ask for the length of this word, in this case, it's going to be 6. For sure, I want that B right away, don't I? Because I want to put that back in the beginning. Well, how do I find that? Well, I go to the end, that's length, and then I back up 1, 2 places. So if I take my length, there we go, and I subtract 2 from that, 6 minus 2 is going to give me 4. The fourth letter is the one I want. And it doesn't matter what the length is. When you minus 2, you're always going to get to that letter before the AY. So I want to just make a note, before I repeat, I might as well just grab that letter and stick it where I want it. So what I'm going to do right away, let's pick a new color, is I am going to set my normal word to, what am I going to set it to? Well, there's nothing in it right now. I'm going to start with an empty string, and I want to grab that B there, which I know is in position length minus 2. So I'm going to use that block that says letter blank of, and in this case, it's going to be using answer, whatever I started with. And I'm going to fill in the blank with the length minus 2. So that should grab what used to be the first letter and put it right in the beginning of my string. And then I'm ready to loop through however many other letters there are here in the repeat. So then in the repeat loop, I want to do some more setting. I'm going to again set my normal word to of answer. Okay, question. let's see, it should say letter of. Where am I going to get the position? For the first letter, then the second letter, then the third one. Do we have a variable for that yet? Yeah, we're going to have a counter that's going to help us loop through the word. Anytime you loop through a string, you got to have a counter to identify the first letter, then the second letter, then the third letter. So I'm going to use my counter. It's called position. I'm going to grab that letter. And am I set normal word equal to that letter? Yes, no, maybe. I have a slight problem there. I don't want to just do a set. I want to do a, not change. We can't do change with strings. But you're on the right track. Starts with a J.
Join.
Join. Yeah, we need a join in there. Yeah. So in this case right here, it's going to have to be a join. Oops. And we're going to join normal word with that new letter. And then we'll update the position. And really, that's all I need to do in the loop. I just need to keep grabbing the next letter, updating the position, grab the next letter, update the position, grab the next letter, update position. How many times do I do that? Well, let's see. I used a -2 to get to the first letter I wanted here, that B. So what should I do to stop right before the B? Instead of a -2, a -3, yeah. So the repeat is just going to take the length -3. Right, so that's all I should need inside of my repeat there. And then what's the last thing I need to do? I just want to say what normal word is. Or I could be more clever and say, whatever word in Pig Latin should be this normally. We could put both of them in there. Because the Pig Latin word came in as answer, and then I'm using this new variable, normal word, to give its variation. If you haven't already done the reverse Pig Latin script, I ask you give it a try now.
Okay.
Questions on this process?
So, okay, so it's
So let me get to a new screen here. So again, let's say the word I want to use in Pig Latin is Ike Bay. And I want my script to change that into bike. To make that happen, I need to realize each of these letters has a position, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And anytime you want to look at each letter in a word, you have to run through a loop, and you have to have a counter that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, however many times you need it. And we're going to use for our variable for a counter, sometimes I called it counter, sometimes I called it position. But you need a variable that counts through the letters of the word. And in your repeat loop, you have to increase that counter by 1 each time you do it. So I am 95% sure this will work. How come I'm not 100% sure? Because I haven't done it yet. Yeah. I thought it seems reasonable. So again, if you haven't done this one, if you already did the Pig Latin sentence one, don't worry about this, do something else for now.
no.
Give it a try.
Does this script look about right?
All right, so here I'm starting to sketch that out in Scratch. So I want to be able to start the script. We should always initialize variables. So a counter is usually initialized at 1. Now, normally I would initialize a string to nothing, but in this case, I want to initialize my string to that one specific letter, 2 in from the end. So again, I'm going to need the length of whatever they give me. And I want to take 2 away from that length to identify that one special letter. And then I want to use that to grab the letter. So notice how I had to nest those 3 blocks together. And again, a lot of times in Scratch, when I nest things like this, I grab the pieces I need and then start putting them together carefully. So I'm going to take the innermost one and stick that into the next block. I'm going to take that middle block and stick it into the outer block. And then once I have all of that, I'm going to put it where it needs to be. So that's going to be my initialization of the variable, because I know that's what I want its first letter to be. Now, I'm just going to duplicate this length of -2, because I know I want to use something like it in my repeat. And I decided that needs to be a -3. Why a -3? Well, let's look back at the notes. In the notes, I know I don't want the AY at the end, and I just dealt with the letter that's 2 in from the end, the third one in from the end, which is a -2 to get there. So I don't need those 3 letters at the end anymore. So that's why the loop has to run -3 times the length. Now I need to put this set and change inside. So I want to then, in the loop, set normal word to a join with itself. And then I need to grab the right letter. Okay, so to grab the right letter, I need to know the position of the letter, and we have a counter for that. That was the whole reason we made the variable called position. So I want letter in whatever position I'm in. And where does my word live? My word currently lives in answer.
Oh.
And then I need to change my position by 1 so I can keep looking for more letters. And I can't put these scripts together well if I don't sketch out on a piece of paper what the heck I think needs to happen. Otherwise, I'm just throwing shit on the screen and hope it works and trying again. And that's a lesson in frustration. So then we're going to say normal word, and I'm going to double check my notes, see if I got everything. All right, so let's see. I'm asking for a word. I'm using answer to collect it. I need a string to rebuild the word in, and I need a counter to keep track of the letters I'm working with. I'm going to set my new word right away to that letter right before the AY near the end. And I'm going to repeat 3 less times than the length, which should give me letters before the last 3. And it should keep adding them on to my word. And I keep updating the position by 1. All right, I think I got everything. Blow that up a little more. All right, I'm going to give it a try. Let's stop and restart it. Okay, so my example was Ike Bay. Ooh,
What?
it worked. Holy crap.
Oh.
All right, so I'm going to make up a new word and see what happens. A longer one. Let's see. Let's write down a word.
First time, no second problem.
All right, so let me see. A longer word could be computer. And this Pig Latin version of that would be computer K. Okay, I'm gonna type that in, see if it works again. Because it could be I accidentally wrote a program that just works for Ike Bay. I've done stuff like that before. Okay, computer K. All right, I think I did it. So what's the important lesson here? The important lesson here is to write down examples. Sometimes you have to do more than that, especially if you're using a loop. You might need to count what's happening in a loop. Remember we made a table a while back to do that, to keep track of the variables? Each row of the table was first time in the loop, second time in the loop, third time in the loop. So there's some days I need to write out a table to figure out what's going on in my loops. Here's another thing I do sometimes when my loop doesn't seem to be working the way I want. In Scratch, what I'll do is I'll grab a say statement and I'll stick it in the loop because I want to know what's normal word doing at that instant in the loop. So I'll do something like say normal word for 2 seconds. And so each time it goes into the loop, it's going to pause for 2 seconds and tell me what normal word is. Sometimes I might want to know what normal word and position is at that time. Right, so those are some troubleshooting things you can use. So say can be used to help debug your code in a loop. Oops, I got rid of something I didn't want to. Back in. All right.
I figured out why it weren't working for
Okay.
my script for a second.
And silly things I do sometimes, you saw me do this in class before. Every once in a while I get set and change backwards. I use one where I should be using the other. Right, I make that mistake
What I
sometimes.
accidentally did was mess it up to make it like answer -3 instead of what you did.
Okay, you had something a little different there?
Well, I messed up by put this outside instead of this.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah. The order you put them in is important.
so I fixed it and now it works.
Okay, and then, and again, we could make this more interesting by taking into account words that have more than one consonant in the beginning, words that have no consonants. That would add a whole extra layer of complexity we'd have to play with.